Welcome to this week's OK at Work with myself, Sarah Sawyer, and my colleague, Russell Berger from the Offit Kurman Labor and Employment Group. And this week, we are talking about companies having a lot of out-of-state workers. So with the new virtual environment, we've been seeing a lot of our clients really having to look at employment laws in other states. So traditionally, at least a lot of my clients have had, maybe one main hub in Maryland or, a certain state. And then maybe they do a little bit of work in a couple surrounding states. They cross in to the other state occasionally, or maybe they have some employees commuting from out of state. Here in Maryland, it's Pennsylvania often, but generally pretty centralized. But now we're seeing a lot of our clients, at least I am, and I'd be interested in your experience, Russell, is that I'm seeing a lot of clients that are having a lot of employees in different states, especially in the tech field, and are having to start to pay attention to the employment laws in other states as they get kind of clusters of employees that are working remotely elsewhere. Have you seen that as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's something that, I think the pandemic has probably made more prevalent, but we were certainly headed in that direction already. Particularly with technology companies and software companies, these are, remote jobs by and large anyway. I've seen a number of clients kind of branch out, and it makes perfect sense because you have a much larger candidate pool for your hiring if you're recruiting across an entire region or across the entire country or anywhere anybody online can get to your job. I mean, that's a much bigger audience, and you're going to get much better candidates if you do it that way. So it makes plenty of sense. But the challenge is, and employers have to keep up with this, is every time you go into a new state, you're going to have potentially new employment rules. And for a lot of our clients, they're Maryland based. You're going to have your Maryland compliant policies already in place, but that might look a little bit different in other states. In some states it might be different, more restrictive. In some states it might be different, less restrictive. And in other states it might be similar but a different set of rules, so you got to write the policy a little bit different. So what we're seeing a fair amount of is employers who want to have that core base handbook and that base set of policies, but then are going to make different tweaks for different employees, whether it's with respect to leave policies or minimum wage or anything else that a state may regulate with respect to employees working in their state. To have state addenda and state-specific policies that address those unique scenarios. Of course, that just means if you've got employees in 25 different states, you've got to have 25 different versions of policies, or at least you've got to look at the same policy under 25 different sets of state law.
Yeah, so it definitely can become cumbersome if you start having people spread out a lot, especially in different regions of the country are more what we consider, I guess, pro-employee than others. So some states, there's really not that many employment laws outside of the federal laws, whereas other states have a lot. Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, California, a lot of those states have a lot of employment laws that you have to consider. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And then also, I would just also note that if you are not compliant or you have issues with these employees and they sue you or there's some kind of litigation, well, you might be heading out to Minnesota to handle that case. So, that's also something to consider as well. I mean, that's another motivating factor to be compliant. But also, even if you are compliant and an employee wants to file something against you, you may end up having to go defend yourself somewhere else. Some of that can be addressed through choice of law provisions and employment agreements. So that's something to consider as well, even if you don't have employment agreements now, because I know a lot of companies, especially with their more rank and file employees or hourly workers, don't always have employment agreements, but that's just one reason in these circumstances that could be important to put that in place.
Yeah, well, and that goes right along with another state-specific issue is restrictive covenants. Can you put a non-compete in place? Can you put non-solicit in place? Can you put employee anti-rating provisions in place. That answer is going to vary from state to state as well. So maybe you don't care so much. Maybe you can come up with something that's generally applicable and be okay with that for the type of employees that you have. But these are all like really important questions that I think employers who are going the route of having employees in a bunch of different states ought to at least be asking, considering, so that you can figure out kind of what you should be doing, what help you need, and then if and when you decide you need that help, at least from our standpoint, we have some tools that give us 50 state surveys, and we can look at some things to make it a little bit more efficient. But really, I think it's on the employer to kind of figure out, hey, like I've got employees in 30 different states, like I gotta make the effort to get this right. And while I'm doing it, I'm gonna see what I can do to protect myself in these different states too.
Yeah, while it might sound cumbersome, it's definitely doable, and in a lot of circumstances, it's worthwhile. But just want to be on top of it and make sure that you're handling it, as we suggest often on this program, being proactive and getting ahead of these things so that you do, make it as efficient as possible and make sure that you're covered. So, well, thank you, Russell, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sarah.